something, man, I do it till I get what I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something I love.
What's going on, everybody? It's your big homie, the Armchair Operator, and welcome to another video. If you're new to the channel, thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you find this video informative, maybe even a little bit entertaining. And if you're coming back to the channel, thank you so much for coming back. I hope that you also find this video informative and maybe a little entertaining. Now, as you can see, we are on location, and once again, we are at the gun range. And today, I want to talk a little bit about the advantages of striker-fired pistols. If you remember my last video, I talked a little bit about double action, single action, how it works, and some of the pros and cons of that. If you want to hear more about that, definitely check out the video. It should be floating somewhere in the description, like the link to the video. But today we're going to focus on striker-fired pistols. And my two examples for today's video are going to be the Springfield Echelon and my new pickup, the Smith & Wesson M&P Metal Carry Comp, as you can see down here on the table. At the moment, both firearms are clear. All right, now my OGs to this already know what a striker-fired gun is and what some of the pros and cons that come with striker-fired guns, but some of the new people maybe not so much. So striker-fired guns is basically a firearm that has an internal striker, which is basically a pin that when you activate the trigger, it sends the firing pin into the strike the primer of the bullet, and it sends the bullet down range, and then you got the bang and the boom and all that good stuff that we're familiar with. Striker-fired guns is probably the most popular form of semi-automatic pistol that's really out there nowadays, and you can basically thank I would say the Glock, me personally, for making striker-fired guns as popular as it is, at least in modern times. Glock pretty much changed the game as far as that, and a lot of companies since then basically have kind of copied their formula and added their own little spin to it, you know, here and there. When you're talking about your M&Ps or your Springfields or your Walthers or even your CZs and whatever your case may be. Now, there are a lot of advantages to having a striker-fired gun. The biggest advantage really comes down to the trigger pull. You have that consistent trigger pull, whatever it is, throughout. So it's very easy to kind of train your body to activate that trigger in a clear, consistent manner. So essentially, we got our two props here. We're gonna put the target at 5 yards, and let's just throw some rounds down range and talk a little bit about each gun. First up, the M&P Metal Frame Carry Comp. All right, first up, the M&P Metal Frame Carry Comp. All right, so like I said, we got the target basically at 7 yards. This is not really just a review. This is just basically me talking about the advantages and maybe some of the disadvantages of striker-fired guns. But anyway, we got 2 magazines of 17 rounds loaded up, and we are running MadTech 115 grain full metal jackets. All right, let's send them. And I stand corrected, we're at 5 yards, not 7 yards. Pretty tight group. I mean, damn well better be. It's at 5 yards, right? Oh, through that one. Pretty damn good. Let's look at the target. All right, so I threw one. I felt that the minute I broke the shot, but the rest of these, nice tight fist size group. All right, so striker-fired triggers. The M&P Metal Frame Carry Comp has about a 4.5-ish pound trigger pull. It's actually really good, really crisp. I have some of my own personal things, I would say criticisms about it, but I will say, like, all right, for example, there's a lot of take up with the trigger. It has a nice smooth break and a relatively soft reset. Now here's the thing about striker-fired pistols, which we'll get into one of my pros. like I said, the trigger pull is rather consistent throughout, so you don't have to worry about that hard first trigger pull like in a double action single action gun. But with a striker gun, it's basically the same across the board. Also, if you got a really decent striker fire trigger, you're doing pretty good. Like, they're not super heavy. Like, a lot of times there are some heavy ones out there, for example. Don't get me wrong, like some of your Glocks, especially some of your older Glocks, have kind of like north of a 5-pound trigger pull. And when you're talking about pistols, that's trending a bit more on the heavy side. And then you got some of your lighter triggers like your Canics, even the newer M&Ps, Performance Centers, your Walther PDPs, whatever. Okay, they have lighter trigger pulls. So like I said, one of the main pros is that it's a consistent trigger pull throughout, so it's easier to train with, easier to be familiar with it. And once you're trained up and familiar, it's easier for you to be very competent with that trigger pull. All right, now let's load up and let's go again. All right, we got another magazine of 16 rounds loaded up. The target is back at 5 yards, but this time we're gonna go for the head box. Let's just work that trigger on this M&P, okay? That full 1,000 round follow-up video is coming soon though. But I gotta say, so far, no problems. But anyway, let's go. All right, let's check the target. Like I said, I threw that one a little low. I felt it as soon as I shot it, but all of these were on point. All right, so about striker triggers. So one of the reasons why some striker triggers have a lot of take up is basically like a safety thing. So remember, with double action, single action guns, you got the heavy first shot, that long trigger pull. It's a built-in safety feature. And with striker guns, when you have that lot of take up, they basically call that pre-travel. It's essentially to kind of help you from having an ND, which is a negligent discharge. And when you're in a stressful situation, if you have a duty gun or even a concealed carry gun, it's very easy. Like if you have one of those light triggers, it's very easy to activate that trigger without even thinking about it, because that wall is so short and that break is so soft. It's very easy to have an incident, and that's what you don't want. So a lot of times they will add that pre-travel in the trigger just to give you that little bit of extra cushion to, you know, so that you don't fumble the bag, for lack of a better way of putting it. From what I hear, some police departments actually require a heavy trigger pull on their duty guns. I believe the NYPD is one of them. Y'all let me know if there are more and down in the comments, but I have heard about them, and I'm pretty sure that there are others too. But again, it's one of those safety things, so that way when you actually have your finger on that trigger, or rather you have your hand on that gun and you hit that trigger, you really meant for that firearm to discharge, and which is kind of the point. But of course, always remember, finger off the trigger until ready to shoot. That's one of the laws of gun safety. Don't forget it. We use it for a reason. But anyway, enough talking. Let's put up a new target and let's pull the Echelon out and let's throw some rounds down range with the Echelon. All right, we are loaded up. We got the Echelon ready. The target is at 5 yards. So let's send the rounds down range, and then we'll get into some of the, well, we'll talk about some more of the pros, and then we'll get into some of the cons of striker fire guns. All right, we're going for the center mass. Pretty damn good, if I do say so myself. Let's try again. Let's look at that target. Lost 2 down here. The rest of this, the result speaks for itself. Now, another advantage of striker fire guns in general is that they're just so damn popular nowadays. You got so many different makes and manufacturers, your Glocks, your 6 Sauers, your Smith & Wessons, CZ, Walther, Taurus. Like, I could go on and on and on about that. The good thing about it is, like, you have so many different options to choose from out there. Not only that, the aftermarket for trigger parts and components, depending on the manufacturer, is just broad. I mean, you could customize the look of the trigger, the feel of the trigger. There's just so many different things that you could do with striker fire guns in general, depending on the manufacturers, that you could kind of go crazy with it if you want to. So with that being said, let's load up again and let's talk about some of the disadvantages of striker guns. So when it comes to striker fire guns, there aren't too many disadvantages, but the 4 main disadvantages I could come up with kind of go a little something like this. And now they're in no particular order. The first disadvantage is no second strike capability. Now that comes with a caveat. There are some striker fire guns that have double strike capability, and I believe one of the Canics have that ability. But by and large, most of your striker guns don't have second strike capability. And essentially what that means is, like, say you go to squeeze your trigger and click, nothing happens, okay? But you extract that round from the firearm and you see that little dimple in the firing king, indicating basically what most people call a light strike, all right? So with a double action, single action gun, you don't even have to do all that. You can squeeze your trigger again, send that hammer back into the firing pin and let that firing pin hit their primer again, basically the second strike. Most striker fire guns, you really can't do that, because in order to recock the striker, you have to rack the slide. And of course, with a semi-auto pistol, the minute you rack the slide, you're going to eject the round, hopefully. So that's what I mean by no second strike capability. The second disadvantage of striker guns is that they're fast, but if you're looking for the fastest triggers possible, you basically want to look at something like a single action style trigger. Those are probably some of your fastest, best triggers that you could find out there anywhere on the market. Now, don't get me wrong, striker fire triggers can get pretty damn fast. You know, like your PDP performance duty triggers, the triggers in the Canic Rivals, some of your aftermarket upgraded triggers like your Apex triggers or your Timney Alpha triggers. Those triggers are really freaking fast. But if you want the absolute fastest trigger possible, you're going single action all day, okay? Now, the next disadvantage to having a striker fire gun really comes down to dry fire. And essentially, when you're practicing your dry fire at home, like if you have a double action, single action gun, you don't have to keep racking the slide in order to recock the striker, just based on the nature of a double action, single action gun. And even when it comes to like a single action gun that has like an external hammer, such as your 1911s or your 2011s, well, it's easier to practice your dry fire with that, because all you got to do is cock the hammer manually, okay, and then continue practicing your dry fire. But with striker guns, in most instances, you're going to have to rack the slide to recock the striker. Now, that's not really a big deal for most people when you're practicing dry fire, but it's just kind of like an extra step. Now, they do have aftermarket modifications that you can make to your striker guns where you don't have to rack the slide. I believe there's some for Glocks and there may be some for your M&Ps, but just like as it comes out of the box, essentially you're going to have to rack the slide again in order to recock the striker. All right. And the last disadvantage that I can really think of when it comes to striker fire guns would be that it's easier to have like a negligent discharge with striker guns versus, say, a double action gun. Now, again, like I said in my double action video, one of the benefits of having a double action gun or a double action single action gun is that heavy double action trigger pull. And with the heavy double action trigger pull, it makes it harder to accidentally manipulate the trigger in order to discharge the firearm. Well, with a striker gun, the trigger pull weights are not anywhere near as heavy in most instances compared to a double action style trigger. So you're going to have to be a bit more careful when you're talking about a striker gun. Now, a lot of striker guns do have built-in safeties. You know, they have like the little dingus safety, like the little Glocks, you know, the little blade in the front. You know, that's a trigger safety, right? The newer MMPs have those, you know, your Canon, your Walthers, HKs. Like, there are a lot of pistol manufacturers now that have a similar style safety, and there are some that don't, like your FNs, like your 509s or your 510s, 545s. Those are basically striker guns, but they don't have the little trigger dingus safety that some are like your Glocks would have. So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, with proper handgun discipline, it's not something that you're ever really going to have to worry about. You know, finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot, keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following your rules of handgun safety. If you follow that, you'll be good. But again, it is a slight con to the striker guns, but I promise you, it's definitely not the end of the world. So, but anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this quick video about the pros and the cons of striker guns. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. If you could think of some more pros or some more cons that I didn't really cover in this video, definitely drop it down in the comment section. Let's get this discussion popping, and let's share the knowledge, and let's just help us all grow to be better. Okay? All right, I'm signing off. This is your big homie, the Armchair Operator, and I'm out, man. Peace.